The most dangerous man in Chicago walked into her restaurant, and he wasn't alone. He brought the one person who could destroy her entire life in seconds: his mother. Everyone knew Lorenzo Moretti was a cold-blooded killer, a Mafia don who showed no mercy to his enemies. But when his mother, the terrifying Sofia Moretti, grabbed the trembling waitress's wrist and whispered a single question, the color instantly drained from Lorenzo's face. What did the old woman hear? And why did her words force the most powerful criminal in the city to freeze in pure terror? The truth wasn't just a scandal. It was a death sentence. The rain in Chicago didn't wash the city clean. It just made the grime slicker, turning the asphalt into black mirrors that reflected the neon signs of the meat-packing district. Inside the Gilded Spoon, an upscale bistro that catered to politicians and the type of businessmen who didn't carry business cards, the atmosphere was warm, golden, and suffocatingly tense. Haley Bennett adjusted her apron for the 10th time in as many minutes. Her hands were shaking. She tucked a stray lock of chestnut hair behind her ear, checking her reflection in the polished brass of the espresso machine. She looked tired. The dark circles under her eyes were carefully concealed with cheap concealer, but the exhaustion was bone deep. She was 24, but she felt 50. "Table 4 is open," the manager, Mr. Giles, hissed as he walked past her. Giles was a man who sweated profusely, even in the dead of winter. Today he looked like he was about to have a coronary. "VIPs. Do not, I repeat. Haley, do not mess this up. If you drop so much as a spoon, you're out on the street." "I know, Mr. Giles," Haley whispered, clutching her ordering pad against her chest like a shield. "Who is it?" Giles didn't answer. He didn't have to. The heavy oak doors of the restaurant swung open, and the silence that fell over the dining room was instantaneous. It wasn't the silence of respect. It was the silence of prey recognizing a predator. Two men in dark suits entered first, scanning the room with earpieces and cold, dead eyes. They moved with military precision, clearing a path. Then he walked in. Lorenzo Moretti. Haley felt her breath hitch in her throat, her lungs seizing up as if all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Lorenzo was taller than she remembered from the newspapers, broader in the shoulders. He wore a charcoal three-piece suit that probably cost more than Haley would earn in a decade. His face was a mask of bored indifference, carved from granite with high cheekbones and eyes the color of storm clouds. He was beautiful in the way a loaded gun is beautiful, sleek, powerful, and lethal. But it was the woman on his arm who made the blood turn to ice in Haley's veins. Sofia Moretti, the matriarch. Rumors about Sofia were darker than the ones about her son. They said Lorenzo pulled the trigger, but Sofia chose the target. She was a petite woman dressed in severe black lace, leaning on a silver-handled cane, not because she needed it, but because she liked to point it at people she displeased. Her silver hair was pulled back into a tight chignon, and her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and utterly merciless. "Oh, God," Haley whispered, shrinking back into the shadows of the service station. Not them. Anyone but them. She couldn't serve them. She couldn't be seen. If Lorenzo looked at her, really looked at her, he might see the resemblance. He might ask questions. And if he asked questions, the house of cards Haley had built over the last 3 years would come crashing down, burying her and the secret she protected. "Bennett!" Giles snapped his fingers in her face. "Table 4. Now! The other server is stuck with the senator's party. Go!" Mr. Giles, please, Haley pleaded, her voice trembling. Can't Sarah take them? I'm not feeling well. I might faint. If you don't walk over there in the next 5 seconds, you're fired. Giles growled, his face reddening. And I'll make sure you don't get a reference for so much as a janitor job in this city. Move. Haley looked at the door. The rain was pouring down outside. She had rent due in 3 days. She had medical bills piling up on the kitchen counter. She had a little boy at home who needed asthma medication that the insurance wouldn't cover. She swallowed her fear. She had no choice. She took a deep breath, plastered a professional plastic smile on her face, and walked toward the table where the monsters were sitting. Lorenzo was pulling the chair out for his mother. His movements were fluid, elegant. He didn't look around the room. He didn't care who was watching. He owned the room. He owned the city. Haley approached the table just as Sophia settled into her seat. The older woman placed her cane against the table's edge with a definitive clack. "Good evening," Haley said, her voice surprisingly steady, though her knees felt like water. "Welcome to the Gilded Spoon. My name is Haley, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Lorenzo didn't look up. He was busy adjusting his cufflinks, gold glinting under the chandelier light. Sparkling water for the table. A bottle of the 95 Barolo, decanted. His voice was a deep baritone, a sound that vibrated through Haley's chest. It brought back a flash of a memory, a masked ball 3 years ago. A dark garden, a voice whispering promises that turned out to be lies. She pushed the memory away violently. "Of course, sir," Haley said. She turned to Sophia. "And for you, Signora." Sophia Moretti turned her head slowly. Her eyes dark and beady like a hawk's locked onto Haley's face. The scrutiny was intense, physical. It felt like the woman was peeling back layers of Haley's skin to see the bones beneath. "You have an accent," Sophia said. It wasn't a question. "It is slight, but it is there. Not Chicago, not New York. Somewhere softer." Haley's heart hammered against her ribs. She had worked hard to scrub the rural lilt from her voice, the telltale sign of her upbringing in the hills of Tennessee, far away from the grime of the mob. "I've moved around a lot, ma'am," Haley lied smoothly. "I suppose I've picked up bits and pieces from everywhere." Sophia hummed a low, skeptical sound. "The menu," she demanded, holding out her hand without breaking eye contact. Haley handed her the leather-bound menu. As she did, her sleeve rode up slightly. Just an inch. It revealed the faint, jagged line of a scar on the inside of her wrist, a burn mark from a kitchen accident years ago. Lorenzo's eyes flicked up. For the first time, the Don looked at the waitress. His gaze landed on the scar, then traveled up to her face. Haley froze. She saw the gears turning in his eyes. A flicker of recognition. A shadow of a doubt. He narrowed his eyes, studying her features, the curve of her jaw, the shape of her nose. Haley held her breath. He knows. He remembers. "Do we have a problem?" Lorenzo asked, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. Haley realized she had been staring. She quickly lowered her eyes. "No, sir." "My apologies. I'll fetch the wine immediately." She turned and fled toward the bar, her heart beating so fast she thought she might go into cardiac arrest. "Who is she?" Lorenzo asked his mother as soon as Haley was out of earshot. He watched the waitress retreat, his brow furrowed. Sophia opened the menu unbothered. "A waitress, Lorenzo, a nobody. Why does she remind you of one of your broken toys?" Lorenzo clenched his jaw. "No, just familiar." Everyone looks familiar when you hold the power of life and death over them. My son, Sophia said dismissively. Focus. We are here to discuss the incident with the Kovac family, not to ogle the help. But Lorenzo couldn't focus. He kept watching the kitchen door, waiting for the girl to come back. That scar. He had seen a scar like that before. But where the dinner service was an exercise in torture. Every time Haley approached table 4, she felt like she was walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. She poured the wine with surgical precision, terrified that a single drop spilled on the white tablecloth would be the end of her. Lorenzo remained quiet, brooding. He barely touched his veal. He spent the meal watching the room, his eyes constantly flicking back to Haley whenever she was within 10 feet. It wasn't a look of lust. It was the look of a man trying to solve a puzzle. Sophia, on the other hand, was enjoying herself. She ate slowly, critiquing every bite and using every opportunity to make Haley speak. "This risotto," Sophia said, waving her fork. "It uses saffron, yes, but not the Spanish kind. This is Iranian saffron." "I believe so, ma'am," Haley said, keeping her eyes on the water glass she was refilling. "You believe so?" Sophia scoffed. "You should know. A good server knows every ingredient. Tell me, child, do you have children?" The question came out of nowhere, sharp and sudden as a slap. Haley nearly dropped the pitcher. Excuse me, you have the hips of a mother," Sophia said bluntly, taking a sip of wine. "And the patience. You treat me like a toddler who might throw a tantrum. Only a mother has that kind of patience." Haley forced a laugh, but it sounded brittle. "I don't talk about my personal life at work, Signora." "A mistake," Sophia murmured. "A woman's life is her history. If you hide it, people assume you are ashamed." "Mother, leave the girl alone," Lorenzo said, though his tone lacked its usual authority. He was still studying Haley. "What is your name again?" "Haley, sir." "Haley," he tested the word. It sounded foreign in his mouth. "Bennett?" "Yes, sir." "Any relation to the Bennetts in Jersey?" "No, sir. No family in Jersey." "Where is your family, then?" Lorenzo pressed. He leaned forward, the predator scenting blood. "They passed away." Haley said, the lie coming easier this time, because it was half true. The family she used to have was dead to her. "It's just me." "Just you," Sophia repeated. She looked at Haley's hands. "No ring. So you are raising this theoretical child alone." Haley felt a flush of anger rise up her neck. These people thought they owned the world, thought they could dissect her life just because they bought a bottle of expensive wine. "I didn't say I had a child, ma'am," Haley said, her voice firming up. "Is there anything else I can get you?" Sophia smiled. It was a terrifying expression. "Espresso, 2. And bring the check. Lorenzo is boring me tonight." Haley nodded and turned to leave. As she pivoted, her pocket vibrated. She had forgotten to silence her phone. It was a strict violation of company policy. Panic flared in her chest. She reached down to mute it through the fabric of her apron, but her hand fumbled. The phone slipped out of her apron pocket and clattered onto the floor, landing right next to Sophia's expensive Italian leather boots. Time stopped. The screen lit up. It was the lock screen. Haley lunged for it, but Sophia was faster. For an old woman, she moved with the speed of a cobra. She placed the rubber tip of her cane firmly on the phone, pinning it to the floor. "Clumsy," Sophia tisked. She looked down at the screen. The lock screen was a high-definition photo. It was a picture of a 3-year-old boy. He was laughing, sitting on a swing set, his hair messy and wind-blown. But it wasn't the hair that mattered. It was the eyes. The boy had heterochromia, One eye was a deep chocolate brown. The other was a startling, icy grey-blue, the exact same shade of grey-blue as Lorenzo Moretti's eyes. Haley froze her hand, hovering inches from the phone. She looked up and saw Sophia staring at the screen. The old woman's expression shifted from arrogance to shock, and then to something much more dangerous calculation. Sophia lifted her gaze to Haley. Then she looked at Lorenzo, who was looking at his phone, oblivious to the drama unfolding at his feet. Sophia lifted her cane. "Pick it up," she commanded softly. Haley snatched the phone, shoving it deep into her pocket. She was trembling so hard her teeth chattered. "I'm so sorry. I have to go." "Wait," Sophia said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a judge delivering a verdict. Lorenzo looked up. "What is it?" Sophia ignored her son. She kept her eyes pinned on Haley. "The boy in the picture," Sophia said, her voice deceptively light. "He is yours." "My nephew," Haley lied. "He's my nephew." "He has beautiful eyes," Sophia said. "Very distinctive." Lorenzo frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Nothing, Lorenzo," Sophia said, never breaking eye contact with Haley. "Just admiring the genetics of the common folk. Go, child, get the espresso." Haley fled. She ran to the kitchen, her heart pounding like a sledgehammer. She needed to leave. She needed to grab her bag, run out the back door, and never come back. They had seen the eyes. Sophia had seen the eyes. "Giles!" Haley gasped, grabbing the manager's arm. "I can't. I feel sick. I have to go home. Please." "Are you insane?" Giles hissed. "They are ordering coffee. You finish the table or you don't get your paycheck. Do you hear me? Not a dime." Haley looked at the back door. She needed that money. She needed the medicine. If she ran now, she'd be destitute. Maybe Sophia didn't put it together. Maybe she just thought it was a coincidence. Heterochromia was rare, but not impossible. She forced herself to breathe. Just drop the check, get the tip, leave. She prepared the espressos with shaking hands. She placed them on the tray. She walked back out into the dining room. Lorenzo and Sophia were talking in hushed tones. As Haley approached, they stopped. She placed the cups down. "Your espresso." Sophia reached out and grabbed Haley's wrist. Her grip was iron strong. "Stay," Sophia commanded. Lorenzo looked at his mother confused. "Mother, what are you doing?" Sophia ignored him. She pulled Haley closer, so close that Haley could smell her expensive perfume roses and old dust. "I know a lie when I hear one," Sophia whispered to Haley. "And I know those eyes. I saw them on my husband. I see them on my son." Haley tried to pull away, but Sophia held fast. "Please," Haley whispered. "You're hurting me." "The waitress," Sophia said, turning to her son, her voice raising just enough to be heard clearly. "She says the boy on her phone is her nephew, but she looks at you with fear, Lorenzo, not the fear of a gangster, the fear of a ghost." Lorenzo stared at Haley. "Let her go, Mother. You're making a scene." "Look at her," Sophia snapped. "Look at her face, Lorenzo. Does she not look like the girl from the masquerade, the one you couldn't stop talking about, the one who vanished the morning after you took over the family?" Lorenzo went still. He looked at Haley, really looked at her. He stripped away the waitress uniform, the messy hair, the exhaustion. He imagined her in a silk gown, a mask over her eyes. "Camilla," he whispered, the name he had known her by. Haley or Camilla closed her eyes. "My name is Haley," she said, her voice breaking. "Show him the picture," Sophia commanded. "No," Haley said. "Show him." Sophia's voice cracked like a whip. Lorenzo stood up. The movement was so sudden the table shook. "Show me what—" "The boy," Sophia said, releasing Haley's wrist with a shove. "Show him your son, Haley." Haley stood paralyzed. The entire restaurant was watching now. Haley stammered. "What did you say to her?" Lorenzo asked his mother, his voice low and terrifying. Sophia leaned back, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "I asked her about the boy, and she told me a lie. But then—" She paused for dramatic effect. "I asked her the date of birth, and do you know what she whispered?" Lorenzo looked at Haley. "What?" Sophia looked straight at her son. "She said he was born on October the 14th. Lorenzo's face turned pale. The blood drained from his cheeks, leaving him looking like a wax figure. He staggered back slightly, his hand gripping the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white. October 14th, 9 months to the day after the masquerade ball. 9 months after the only night he had ever allowed himself to be vulnerable. The silence at the table was deafening. Lorenzo looked at Haley, his eyes wide, searching for the truth. "Is it true?" he rasped. "Is he mine? Is it true?" Lorenzo's voice was no longer a smooth baritone. It was jagged like torn metal. He loomed over the table, his presence suddenly filling the entire dining hall, sucking the air from the room. The background noise of clinking silverware and hushed conversations died instantly. Everyone knew the look on a Don's face when execution was imminent. Haley couldn't breathe. The truth was a physical weight in her chest, suffocating her. She looked at Sophia, whose smug satisfaction was grotesque, then back at Lorenzo, whose eyes, those terrifying, beautiful grey-blue eyes, were practically burning holes into her soul. "No," Haley whispered the lie, pathetic even to her own ears. "No, it's a coincidence. Signora Moretti is mistaken. I have to get back to work." She tried to take a step back, but her legs felt leaden. "Give me the phone," Lorenzo demanded. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. The command was absolute. "It's my private property," Haley said, her voice gaining a tremor of desperate defiance. "You have no right." Lorenzo moved faster than she thought possible for a man of his size. In one fluid motion, he rounded the table. He didn't grab her, not roughly. Instead, he crowded her space, boxing her, in between the table and his massive frame. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood, and expensive leather washed over her, triggering a visceral memory of hot breath against her neck in a dark garden. "I will not ask again. Camilla," he murmured, using the name she had abandoned. Haley looked around wildly for help. Mr. Giles was standing near the kitchen door, wringing his hands, looking everywhere but at her. The 2 bodyguards by the entrance had shifted their hands, hovering near their chest holsters. There was no help coming. With shaking fingers, she pulled the phone from her apron pocket. She didn't unlock it. She just held it out her arm, rigid. Lorenzo took it. He pressed the side button. The screen illuminated. He stared. He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. For Lorenzo Moretti, the world dissolved. The restaurant, the rain outside his mother's scheming presence, it all faded. There was only the 3-inch screen. He was looking at a ghost. He was looking at himself 30 years ago. The jawline was softer, the cheeks rounder with baby fat, but the eyes that distinctive 1 in a million genetic anomaly. The right eye, the color of wet earth, the left, the color of glacial ice. "Dio mio," he breathed the words barely audible. He traced the outline of the boy's face on the screen with his thumb. A strange sensation clawed at his chest. It wasn't anger, though, that was simmering beneath the surface. It was something primal, a recognition of blood. A sudden, terrifying shift in his universe's center of gravity. He looked up from the phone to Haley. His expression was unreadable now, a chaotic mix of fury, awe, and betrayal. 3 years, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You stole 3 years from me. I didn't steal anything, Haley cried, tears finally spilling over. I protected him from you, from this life. You think you can protect him better than I can. Lorenzo stepped closer, his voice rising to a growl. You are waiting tables for scraps. While my son lives in God knows what conditions. He's happy, Haley retorted, her maternal instinct overriding her fear. He's safe. He doesn't know what a gunshot sounds like. He doesn't have bodyguards checking his closet for bombs. That's a better life. A naive life, Sophia interjected coolly from her seat. She hadn't moved, still sipping her wine, as if watching a mildly interesting play. And now a dangerous one. Do you think we are the only ones with eyes? Girl, if I saw it, others will see it. You have been careless. Lorenzo ignored his mother. His entire focus was on Haley. Where is he? Haley sealed her lips. She would die before she told him. Where is my son, Camilla? He grabbed her upper arms now, not painfully, but with enough force to show her that escape was impossible. His grip was possessive, territory reclaimed. My name is Haley, she sobbed, and you'll never find him. I have contingencies. If I don't call in an hour, he gets moved. It was a bluff, a desperate, stupid bluff. Her only contingency was Mrs. Gable, the 70-year-old neighbor watching Leo, whose idea of security was locking the deadbolt. Lorenzo laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound void of humor. You think you can outmaneuver the Moretti family in Chicago? I'll find him before the hour is up. And when I do, we are all going home. No. Haley struggled against his grip. I won't go back. I won't let him grow up like you. You have no choice, Lorenzo snarled, pulling her closer until their noses almost touched. You made your choice the night you slept with me and ran away. You are mine. He is mine. And nobody walks away from me twice. He turned to his bodyguards, snapping his fingers. Matteo, Enzo, bring the car around back. Clear the kitchen. Mr. Moretti, please. It was Giles finally finding his spine, waddling over. This is highly irregular. You can't just take my staff during a shift. The customers are staring. Lorenzo didn't even look at the manager. He just backhanded the air in Giles's direction. One of the bodyguards stepped forward and shoved Giles hard in the chest, sending him stumbling back into a waiter's station with a crash of silverware. The restaurant is closed, Lorenzo announced to the stunned room, his voice booming. Everyone out, now! Your meals are on the house. Pandemonium erupted. Chairs scraped people, grabbed coats, murmurs of fear rippled through the room. Nobody argued with Lorenzo Moretti when he was in this mood. Lorenzo kept his grip on Haley's arm, dragging her toward the kitchen doors. She dug her heels in, slipping on the slick floor. But it was useless. He was an unstoppable force. Sophia, let's go, Lorenzo called back over his shoulder. Sophia slowly stood up, adjusted her shawl, and picked up her cane. She walked past the overturned waiter's station, stepping delicately over scattered forks. As she passed the pale, trembling Giles, she dropped $100 bill onto his chest. For the breakage, she said dryly. She followed her son into the kitchen, leaving the chaos of the gilded spoon behind. The trap had sprung. The matriarch had her win. The kitchen of the Gilded Spoon was a symphony of stainless steel steam and shouting cooks that fell dead silent the moment Lorenzo Moretti dragged Haley through the swing doors. "Out," Lorenzo commanded. The kitchen staff didn't need to be told twice. They dropped pans, abandoned sizzling grills, and fled out the side exit into the alley. Haley was sobbing openly, now her resistance fading into sheer terror. "Lorenzo, please, don't do this. He's just a baby. He needs his mother, not this." Lorenzo stopped near the grease traps, spinning her around to face him. The fluorescent kitchen lights were harsh, highlighting the tears streaking her makeup and the raw fury in his eyes. "He needs his father," Lorenzo retorted. "He needs his legacy. Did you think you could hide a Moretti heir forever? Did you think blood wouldn't call to blood? I don't want your legacy," Haley cried. "Your legacy is blood and prison. My legacy is power," he hissed. "It is safety. Something you clearly cannot provide if you're working double shifts in this dump, while strangers watch my son." He let go of her arm, but only to cup her face. His thumbs wiped away her tears, the gesture confusingly tender for a man who was essentially kidnapping her. He looked at her, and for a second, the granite facade cracked. Haley saw the man she had met at the masquerade, the lonely, burdened prince looking for an escape. "Why did you run, Camilla?" He whispered, his voice rough with unresolved pain. "That morning, I woke up and the bed was cold. You left no note, nothing, just gone." Haley squeezed her eyes shut. "I heard you on the phone," she confessed, her voice trembling. "While you were in the shower, I heard you ordering someone to be killed, like you were ordering a pizza. I realized the man in the mask wasn't real. The monster was real." Lorenzo flinched. His hands dropped from her face. The tenderness vanished, replaced by an icy resolve. "The monster keeps the city running. The monster keeps his family safe. You should have trusted me." The back door of the kitchen banged open. Matteo, the head of security, stuck his head in. He was holding a submachine gun underneath his open suit jacket. "Boss, car's ready. But we got a situation." Lorenzo's demeanor shifted instantly from jilted lover to Mafia Don. "What is it?" 2 SUVs parked across the alley, blacked-out windows. "Been idling there since we went inside. Looks like Russo soldiers. They must have been tailing us." Sophia tapped her cane on the oily floor tiles. "The Russos. I told you, Lorenzo. The smell of weakness draws the wolves. We've been inside too long." Haley's blood ran cold. The Russos, the rival family, the ones whose war with the Morettis had filled the newspapers for years with headlines about car bombs and bodies in the river. "They don't know about the boy yet," Lorenzo said, his mind working furiously. "They're just taking a shot at me." He turned to Haley. "Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say. If I tell you to get down, you drop. Do you understand?" Haley nodded mutely. The abstract fear of Lorenzo taking her son was suddenly replaced by the very immediate fear of dying in a dirty alleyway. "Matteo, take point. Enzo, rear guard. Mother, stay between Enzo and the girl. Move." They burst out into the cold Chicago night. The rain had stopped, leaving the alley slick and reflecting the yellow street lights. A massive armored black Cadillac Escalade was idling 10 feet away, its rear door open. They were 5 feet from the car when the night exploded. Tires screeched at the end of the alley. Sunroofs on the 2 parked SUVs popped open. Muzzle flashes lit up the dark like demonic strobe lights. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat. The sound was deafening in the confined space. Bullets sparked against the brick wall above their heads and slammed into the armored plating of the escalade. "Down!" Lorenzo roared. He didn't just tell her. He tackled her. Lorenzo threw his massive weight over Haley, slamming her onto the wet pavement, shielding her body with his own. The breath was knocked out of her. Haley screamed, her face pressed against the gritty asphalt. Above her, Lorenzo was a human fortress. She felt the sickening thud of a bullet impacting his shoulder, not penetrating the Kevlar vest he wore beneath his suit, but hitting with the force of a sledgehammer. He grunted a sharp intake of breath, but didn't move off her. Matteo and Enzo were returning fire. Their weapons roared, sending a hail of bullets toward the attacking SUVs. One of the Russo gunmen screamed and fell back through a sunroof. "Mother, get in the car!" Lorenzo yelled over the gunfire. Sofia Moretti incredibly hadn't fallen. She was crouched behind a dumpster cane, in one hand, a small pearl-handled revolver in the other, which she fired calmly toward the attackers. At Lorenzo's command, she scuttled toward the open car door with surprising speed. Lorenzo hauled Haley to her feet. "Run!" They sprinted the last few feet. Lorenzo shoved Haley into the back seat, virtually throwing her on top of Sofia, then dove in on top of them as another volley of bullets chewed up the pavement where they had just been standing. Matteo jumped into the driver's seat. Enzo dived into the passenger side. "Go, go, go!" Lorenzo bellowed. The Escalade roared to life. Matteo slammed it into reverse, smashing into one of the Russo SUVs with a bone-jarring crunch, spinning it out of the way. Then he threw it into drive and tore down the alley, scraping sparks against the brick walls. They burst out onto the main street, tires smoking, weaving through shocked traffic. Inside the car, there was heavy breathing and the smell of cordite and fear. Haley was trembling uncontrollably, pressed against the rich leather seats. She looked at Lorenzo. He was sitting up now, shrugging off his suit jacket to inspect his shoulder. There was a massive bruise forming already where the slug had impacted the vest. He caught her looking. His eyes were wild adrenaline pumping through his veins. "See," Lorenzo breathed, his chest heaving. "This is the world outside my protection. You were a sitting duck out there, Camilla. You and my son." Haley couldn't argue. The terror of the last 30 seconds had shattered her reality. She had spent 3 years pretending the violence of his world was a distant abstraction. Now she had tasted copper in her mouth and felt the concussive force of gunfire. "Where are we going?" She whispered, her voice hoarse. Lorenzo looked out the window as the city lights blurred past. They were heading towards the wealthy, secluded suburbs, towards the high walls and iron gates of the Moretti estate. "Home," Lorenzo said grimly. "We're going home to get ready. Tonight was just the beginning." He pulled out his phone. "Now give me the address. We're picking up my son." The convoy of 3 armored SUVs, which had rendezvoused with Lorenzo's damaged vehicle under the cover of the highway overpass, tore through the quiet, potholed streets of South Chicago. This was a neighborhood forgotten by the city where streetlights flickered and died, and where the police rarely patrolled. Haley sat in the back of the lead vehicle, her hands clenched so tightly together that her knuckles were white. Beside her, Lorenzo was silent. The adrenaline of the shootout had faded, replaced by a grim, stony tension. He was staring out the window at the decaying row houses, his jaw set hard. "This is where you've been?" he asked, his voice low. It wasn't an accusation anymore. It was disbelief. "You left a penthouse for this." "I bought freedom," Haley whispered. "It was expensive." The cars screeched to a halt, in front of a peeling beige duplex. Mrs. Gable's house. "Stay in the car," Lorenzo commanded his mother. Sophia merely nodded her eyes, scanning the dark street like a radar. Lorenzo and Haley stepped out, surrounded instantly by a ring of bodyguards. Matteo kicked open the chain-link gate. Haley ran up the steps and banged on the door. "Mrs. Gable, it's me. It's Haley." The door cracked open, revealing a terrified elderly woman in a floral nightgown. She looked from Haley to the blood on Haley's apron, and then to the looming shadow of Lorenzo Moretti behind her. "Haley. Oh Lord, child, what have you done?" Mrs. Gable gasped. "I need Leo," Haley said, pushing past her into the living room that smelled of lavender and old dust. "We have to go. Now." "He's asleep," Mrs. Gable stammered, blocking the hallway. "Who are these men? You can't just—" Lorenzo stepped into the light of the hallway. He didn't say a word. He just looked at the woman. The authority radiating off him was palpable. Gable shrank back instinctively, recognizing that she was in the presence of something far more dangerous than a street thug. "We are the boy's family," Lorenzo said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "We are taking him home." Haley ran into the back bedroom. It was a tiny room, barely big enough for the crib and a single dresser. In the crib, curled up under a blanket printed with cartoon rockets, was Leo. He was sleeping soundly, his thumb near his mouth, oblivious to the violence that had just occurred to secure his future. Haley reached down to pick him up, but a large hand stopped her. "Let me," Lorenzo said. Haley froze. "He doesn't know you. If he wakes up, he'll scream." "He is my blood," Lorenzo said. "He will know." Lorenzo leaned over the crib. For a man who had just fired a weapon and survived an assassination attempt, his movements were impossibly tender. He slid his hands under the sleeping toddler. As he lifted the boy, the light from the hallway hit Leo's face. Lorenzo's breath hitched. Seeing the photo was one thing. Holding the weight of his son was another. The boy shifted, scrunching his nose, and let out a soft sigh, resting his head against Lorenzo's chest, right over his heart. Lorenzo looked at Haley. His eyes were shining with a fierce, terrifying possession. "He is too light," Lorenzo murmured. "He is too small for 3 years old. He's a picky eater." Haley defended weakly, though she felt a fresh wave of shame. She had done her best, but money was always tight. Fresh fruit and meat were luxuries. "That changes tonight," Lorenzo declared. He turned and walked out of the room, carrying his son like a holy relic. They moved back to the cars. As Lorenzo stepped onto the sidewalk, a sudden commotion erupted down the block. A car engine roared and headlights swept over them. "Contact front!" Matteo shouted, raising his rifle. But it wasn't an attack. It was a lone police cruiser, its lights flashing. An officer stepped out, hand on his holster. "Hey, what's going on here?" "We got reports of—" The officer stopped. He saw the armored SUVs. He saw the men in suits with military-grade weapons. And then he saw Lorenzo Moretti stepping into the streetlight holding a sleeping child. Lorenzo didn't flinch. He just looked at the cop. The officer's face went pale. He recognized the Don. He knew that intervening here would mean his pension, and likely his life would end tonight. "Get back in your car, officer," Matteo barked. The officer hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then he slowly took his hand off his gun, got back into his cruiser, turned off his lights, and reversed away into the darkness. "You own the police too?" Haley asked, shivering as she climbed back into the SUV. I own the silence, Lorenzo corrected, settling Leo onto his lap. And now I own the future. He looked down at the boy, then at Haley. You will never struggle again, Camilla. But you will never leave these walls again either. You belong to the family now. Haley looked at her son sleeping peacefully in the arms of a monster. She realized with a sinking heart that she hadn't just been kidnapped. She had been annexed. The Moretti estate was not a house. It was a fortress disguised as a palace, located on 10 acres of prime lakefront property. It was surrounded by 12-foot stone walls, topped with electrified wire and sensors. Life inside, however, was a jarring mix of extreme luxury and suffocating tension. It had been 3 days since the incident at the Gilded Spoon. The newspapers were burying the story of the shootout, labeling it a gang-related dispute. Meanwhile, Haley, who was now called Camilla by everyone on staff per Sophia's orders, was trapped in a wing of the mansion that was larger than her entire apartment building. Leo, however, was thriving. Children are resilient, and to Leo, the mansion was a playground. He had a playroom filled with every toy imaginable. He had a personal chef who made him dinosaur-shaped nuggets from organic chicken. And most disturbingly to Haley, he adored Lorenzo. She watched from the balcony of her room as Lorenzo walked with Leo in the garden below. The fierce Mafia Don was kneeling in the grass, helping the toddler stack giant wooden blocks. He takes to the life naturally, a voice rasped behind her. Haley turned. Sophia Moretti was standing in the doorway, leaning on her cane. He's a child, Haley said defensively. He likes the toys. He doesn't understand the blood money that bought them. Sophia walked into the room, her cane tapping rhythmically on the marble floor. Money is money. It has no morality. Only people do. And usually the people with the most morals have the least money. Sophia sat on a velvet chaise lounge. We need to discuss the arrangement. I'm not signing anything, Haley said, crossing her arms. I'm not giving up custody. Don't be stupid, Sophia snapped. Nobody is taking the boy from you. A boy needs his mother, but a king needs a queen. Haley froze. What? The Russos attacked us because they thought Lorenzo was weak, Sophia explained, inspecting her manicured nails. They thought he was distracted, lonely. A bachelor Don is a vulnerability. But a family man, a father that projects stability, immortality. Sophia looked up, her eyes hard as flint. You will marry Lorenzo, next week. I will not, Haley gasped. I don't love him. I fear him. Love comes later. Or it doesn't. It doesn't matter, Sophia said dismissively. Respect matters. Loyalty matters. You have the heir. You are the mother of the next Moretti Don. You cannot be a waitress. You must be a wife. And if I refuse, then you remain a guest, Sophia said coldly. And guests have no legal rights to the children of the house. If you want to have a say in Leo's life, if you want to protect him from the darker sides of this business, you need the ring. You need the status. Haley looked out the window again. Lorenzo was lifting Leo high into the air, and the boy was shrieking with laughter. For the first time, she noticed the perimeter guards standing every 50 feet facing outward with assault rifles. She was in a golden cage. The only way to get the key was to marry the jailer. That evening dinner was a formal affair. The dining table was long enough to seat 20, but it was just the 3 of them, Lorenzo, Sophia, and Haley. Leo had been put to bed by the new nanny. Mother tells me she spoke to you, Lorenzo said, cutting his steak. He didn't look up. She told me you want a prop for a wedding photo, Haley said, her voice shaking but defiant. Lorenzo stopped eating. He wiped his mouth with a linen napkin and looked at her. I want my son to have his mother. And I want my enemies to know that the Moretti line is secure. The Russos are regrouping. They know about the boy now. A spy in the kitchen at the restaurant sold the info this morning. We found him. He has been dealt with. Haley lost her appetite. They know about Leo. They know I have a son, Lorenzo said. Which means you are the two most targeted people in Chicago right now. Marriage gives you my name. My name is a shield. It's a target, Haley argued. It's both, Lorenzo admitted. He stood up and walked to her end of the table. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. He opened it. Inside sat a diamond so large it looked heavy, surrounded by blood-red rubies. This was my grandmother's, Lorenzo said. It has never left the family. He knelt. It wasn't romantic. It was ceremonial. Camilla, he said, using the name of the woman he fell for 3 years ago. Marry me, not for love, but for him. Help me build a fortress he can't fall out of. Haley looked at the ring. She looked at the man who had terrified her, yet who looked at their son with such adoration. She thought of the cold apartment, the constant worry about money, the fear of the future. She slowly extended her hand. For Leo, she whispered. Lorenzo slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. For Leo, he agreed. He kissed her hand, his lips lingering on her knuckles. Suddenly the lights in the dining room flickered. Then they went out completely. Lorenzo! Sophia's voice cut through the darkness, sharp and alert. The emergency red mood lighting kicked on, bathing the room in a sinister crimson glow. The heavy oak doors of the dining room burst open. Matteo stumbled in, blood pouring from a gash on his forehead. Breach! Matteo screamed, raising his gun. West wall! They're inside the perimeter! It's the Russos! They have a team inside! Lorenzo didn't hesitate. He flipped the heavy dining table over with a roar, sending crystal and china crashing to the floor, creating a barricade. Get behind me! He shouted to Haley and Sophia. Leo! Haley screamed, turning toward the stairs. He's upstairs! Matteo, get the mother to the panic room, Lorenzo ordered, pulling a handgun from his waistband and racking the slide. Camilla, stay with me. I'm going to my son. Haley yelled, panic overriding all logic. She bolted toward the doorway, past the bleeding Matteo. Camilla, wait! Lorenzo roared, sprinting after her. They ran into the grand hallway. Gunfire erupted from the upper balcony. Bullets chipped the marble floor around Haley's feet. Men in black tactical gear were rappelling down from the skylights. The war hadn't just come to their doorstep. It was in their living room. The grand foyer of the Moretti mansion had turned into a kill box. The red emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows as muzzle flashes lit up the upper railings. Haley scrambled behind a marble pillar covering her head as glass from the chandelier rained down. Lorenzo slid in beside her, firing 2 controlled shots toward the balcony. A body tumbled over the railing, hitting the floor with a sickening thud. They're going for the nursery, Lorenzo gritted out, reloading his weapon with practiced speed. They want to cut the bloodline. We have to get up there. Haley grabbed his arm. Her fear was gone, replaced by the primal fury of a mother. Lorenzo, move! Cover fire! Lorenzo shouted into his earpiece. Now! Moretti guards poured into the room, from the east wing, engaging the intruders. In the chaos, Lorenzo grabbed Haley's hand. Run! They sprinted up the grand staircase. Bullets whizzed past them like angry hornets. Lorenzo fired as he ran, clearing the landing. They reached the 2nd floor and sprinted down the long corridor toward the nursery. The door to Leo's room was open. No! Haley gasped, her heart stopping. They burst into the room. The nanny was on the floor, unconscious. The crib was empty. The balcony doors were shattered. "There," Lorenzo pointed. Outside on the balcony, a man dressed in black combat gear was holding a struggling, crying Leo under one arm. He was hooking a zip-line to the railing, preparing to rappel down into the dark garden where a getaway vehicle was waiting. It was Victor Russo, the rival Don's youngest brother. "Let him go!" Haley screamed, stepping forward. Victor spun around, raising a pistol to Leo's head. The boy was wailing, reaching out his tiny hands. "Mama, Mama!" Lorenzo froze, his gun raised. He had a shot, but it was risky. If he missed, if Victor flinched. "Drop the gun, Moretti," Victor sneered. "Or the kid's brains paint the wall." Lorenzo slowly lowered his weapon. "This is between us, Victor. Put the boy down. I'll go with you." "I don't want you." Victor laughed. "I want your heart. And this—" He shook Leo, making the boy cry harder. "This is your heart." Haley scanned the room. She was unarmed. She was a waitress. She was nobody. But she was a mother. She saw a heavy bronze statue of a horse on the dresser next to her. "Lorenzo, please!" Haley sobbed, feigning collapse. She sank to her knees, distracting Victor. "Don't let him hurt him." "Pathetic!" Victor spat his eyes, flicking to Haley for a split second. That second was all Lorenzo needed to signal with his eyes. "Do it!" Haley didn't collapse. She lunged. She grabbed the heavy bronze statue and hurled it not at Victor, but at the glass pane of the balcony door that was still hanging loosely in the frame above Victor's head. The heavy glass shattered. A massive shard, like a guillotine blade, fell directly onto Victor's arm, holding the gun. Victor howled in pain, the gun clattering to the floor. Lorenzo moved like a viper. He crossed the room in 2 strides, tackling Victor into the railing. The force of the impact sent Victor over the edge. But Leo was still in Victor's other arm. "Leo!" Lorenzo lunged over the railing, grabbing his son's pajama shirt just as Victor fell. Victor plummeted 2 stories down, crashing into the stone fountain below. Lorenzo hung over the railing, his muscles straining, holding Leo dangling over the abyss. With a roar of effort, he hauled the boy up and over the railing, collapsing backward onto the balcony floor, with Leo safe in his arms. Haley fell onto them, wrapping her arms around both of them. Leo was screaming, burying his face in Lorenzo's shirt. "I've got you," Lorenzo whispered, kissing the boy's head repeatedly. "I've got you. Papa is here." He looked up at Haley. His face was bloodied, his shirt torn, but his eyes were clear. "You saved us," he said. "You threw the statue." "I missed." Haley managed a teary laugh. "No." Lorenzo smiled, reaching out to wipe a smudge of dirt from her cheek. "You didn't miss." 3 months later. The wedding of the decade was held not in a church, but in the private gardens of the Moretti estate. The security was tighter than a presidential inauguration, but the atmosphere was light. Haley stood before the mirror, adjusting the lace of her veil. She looked different now. The tired waitress from the Gilded Spoon was gone. In her place was Camilla Moretti, a woman who carried herself with a steel spine. Sophia entered the room. She didn't knock. "You look adequate," Sophia said, which was high praise coming from her. She handed Haley a bouquet of white roses. "The Russos have sued for peace. Victor survived the fall, but he will never walk again. They know not to touch us now." "Because of Lorenzo?" Haley asked. "Because of you," Sophia admitted grudgingly. "The story of what you did in the nursery. It traveled. A mother who fights like a lioness commands respect in our world. You are a Moretti now." Haley took the flowers. "I did it for my son," And for my son. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Hayley smiled, a genuine, soft smile. He's learning. He's not just a monster, Sophia. He's a father. Hayley walked out into the garden. The aisle was lined with petals. At the altar stood Lorenzo. He looked magnificent in his tuxedo, his grey-blue eyes locked on her. But the best part was the ring-bearer. Little Leo, dressed in a miniature tuxedo, waddled down the aisle holding a pillow. He saw Hayley and waved. "Mama." Lorenzo stepped down from the altar, scooped up his son, and waited for his bride. As Hayley reached them, Lorenzo took her hand. "Ready?" "Ready," she said. He leaned in close. "I love you, Camilla. For real this time." "I know," she whispered back, realizing with a start that she loved him too. The monster had become her protector. The priest began to speak, but nobody was really listening to the words. They were looking at the family standing united against the world. The waitress had served her final table. The queen had taken her throne. And that is the incredible story of the waitress who hid a Mafia heir and the Don who tore the world apart to reclaim them. From a terrified server at the Gilded Spoon to the matriarch of the Moretti crime family, Hayley proved that a mother's love is the most dangerous weapon of all. What did you think of Sophia's reaction? Do you think Hayley made the right choice by marrying Lorenzo, or should she have tried to run again? I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of mafia romance, betrayal, and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We release new dramas every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.